Hi, my name is Megan Callahan, here to talk to you about decoding the food label. So I am a Hy-Vee corporate dietitian, and I'm so honored to be with you guys yet again. I wish it was in person, but I hope that you all are safe and healthy, and I am so happy that you are here to join me for our breakout session. So like I said, decoding the food label. So when you think about going to the grocery store, it can be a little confusing in the way that people will put labels on it saying that it's healthy or organic or no MSG. Things like that make it really confusing for a consumer of what we should be looking for. And that's the marketing, right? Marketers are there to sell a product or sell a service, and they do a very good job of it. So we are here to go through that and hopefully make your next grocery trip a lot easier. So some things I'd like you to ask yourself. When you go to the grocery store, do you turn your product around to look at the food label? If you do that, what nutrients do you look for? Are you looking at sugar? Are you looking at fat? Maybe sodium? What things are going to be the things that are more pronounced to you and things that you're more concerned about? And then thirdly, do you look at the ingredient list? This is something that I feel like is kind of coming up and being more of a big deal than it used to be. So from a consumer's statistics report here in 2020, it was very shocking to see that 57% of people are looking at sugar. So out of all the nutrients on the label, sugar was the number one nutrient that they were looking at. So it's very interesting to see that we do have a new food label that will be across the board here in 2021, and that is one of the things that they changed on this food label. Next was 45% were looking at calories. So 40% of Americans are in the obese category. So it makes sense that they are looking at these calories because they're counting those more often. So 38% of consumers are looking at sodium. This is not shocking with the amount of people that struggle with high blood pressure today. And last but not least, 33% are looking at protein. I think that this really comes into play with the amount of diets that are out today that are very popular, that really put a push on having a higher protein intake. So when you look at the ingredient statistics, 51% of consumers are now turning around and looking at the ingredient list. As a dietitian, I love to see this, but I also get concerned because the internet makes this very confusing. You're going to have individuals that are out there on the internet that do have credentials that are telling you really research-based information, but you'll also have some that have credentials that are telling you more of their opinion-based and not really differentiating between the two. You'll also have people like bloggers and influencers that have absolutely no education in nutrition and things like this, so they're really doing it from their opinion as well. So this makes it very confusing for the consumer to really know what they should be purchasing. So the top 4 that I found that are looked at the most for this is MSG, high fructose corn syrup, those partially and fully hydrogenated oils, as well as aspartame, which just falls into that artificial sweetener category. So our objectives today is we're going to go and we're going to look at what the old food label looked like, and we're going to look at the differences and the changes that we've made for the new food label. After that, we're going to go by disease state or conditions that I find most popular in terms of patients coming to me or consumers having questions for me. So we'll walk through those and what to look for on the nutrition label if that is your concern. And then lastly, we're going to review those 4 that I was talking about earlier in terms of ingredients. We're going to talk through what they are, what they do for the food. We're going to talk through what symptoms that there have been out there to maybe make it to where you wouldn't want to consume it. We're going to talk about the research. And finally, I'm going to give you my suggestion as a registered dietitian and what I would do with those specific ingredients. So let's dive right in. So we're going to look at the food label together. So the old food label was actually designed back in 1992. I was actually a little shocked when I saw this to see that it was only that old. I figured it had been around a little bit longer than that. But right next to it, you're going to see what the new food label is. So this new food label is going to be on all products as of 2021. If the supplier had a larger amount of sales, they actually had to do that by January of 2020. And then if it was a smaller company, they had till 2021 to complete this. So let's just dive right into those changes that you're going to see. The first one you're going to see is that now the print size and the boldness of that print of the calories as well as the serving size is larger and it's more pronounced. So the biggest reason here is because, like I said, 40% of Americans are struggling with obesity. That doesn't even count the population that is struggling with just being overweight. There are so many people that are counting calories today that we want to make sure that it is easier for that consumer to be able to see that and see exactly what they are consuming. The second change that you're going to find on the label today is the serving size. The serving size on something like a pint of ice cream would maybe be 4 servings in a container. How many people sat down and actually consumed that in 4 different serving times? Not many. Most are going to have that in maybe 2 servings, maybe just 1. So with that being said, they looked at reports of what a consumer would typically have when they sat down to eat each product, and then they made that more realistic. So on something like a pint of ice cream, you'll see probably a serving, but then you're also going to see a serving per container, because it may be likely that a consumer would actually have that entire pint of ice cream in that one setting. Another thing that I've seen that already on is salad kits. So a lot of times I'll grab a salad kit for lunch if I forgot to pack my lunch, and now you will see that you'll have a per serving, and then you'll also have a per container option. So then you don't have to do that math. It's taking some of that work out, hopefully making it easier for you to stick to your goals. The third change that you're going to see is that there's no longer the calories from fat. What we've found from research is it's not the amount of fat that you consume, but the types of fats that you consume that are most important. We're going to dive into that a little bit more when we start talking about heart health, but something just to mention as you're seeing the differences between these 2 different labels. The fourth option is probably my favorite change that we see here, and that is the added sugar. So as I said before, it's something that people are looking at. It was the top of the list, and I think it's really important to make that easier for the consumer to see. Something that comes to mind that I think of when I'm looking at the grocery store is applesauce. I don't think a lot of individuals realize that there was sugar being added to applesauce before all of a sudden we had unsweetened applesauce, right? So now when you look at a regular applesauce, you're going to be able to see the difference between the added sugar and then the natural sugar that comes from fruit. I like this. This is awesome for our consumers, and it makes it much easier for you in terms of looking at a label. The dietary guidelines for Americans from 2015 to 2020 suggested that we need to stay under 10% of our total daily intake coming from added sugars. The reason for that is just that they realized that you would not be able to get in all the good that you needed if you were doing more than that 10% amount of your daily intake coming from added sugars. The next thing that you'll see that changed is in that percentage down at the bottom with the vitamins and the nutrients. So you'll see that it used to be mandated that they had vitamin A and vitamin C there. But Americans don't struggle with deficiencies really with either one of those nutrients. So we found that that was maybe not the most important information to be giving our consumers. Now you'll see potassium and vitamin D. Vitamin D, there are so many individuals that are low in that, and potassium too. But on top of that, for potassium, if you struggle with any kind of kidney disease, any kind of renal failure, they need to know those numbers. And so that's making it healthier or easier to be healthier for those individuals too to have that. And then lastly, what you'll see is just a daily percentage change in fiber and sodium, and then that vitamin D, because those recommendations have changed since we originally put these labels out. So let's just dive right in. We're gonna go straight into heart health. So I get asked all the time, why did you choose this product for me? Or what makes you choose that product? And to be honest, it really depends on the individual. I don't just look at a product and say, this is healthy for everyone. I usually am looking at that product and I'm saying, okay, what is this patient's main concern? Is it blood pressure? Is it cholesterol? Is it diabetes? Is it weight loss? What is their main concern and that chief complaint that we need to address? If you look at the big picture, sometimes it can become a little overwhelming. So I find that it's easier to go by condition. So we're gonna start with heart health. The first thing that comes to mind for me when I think of heart health is fat. First off, a lot of people wonder, do I need fat? You definitely need fat in your diet. It helps with the production of hormones, it helps with absorption of different nutrients, and it helps our cells grow. So it is very important for our diet. But like I said before, it's the type of fat that's important. There are 4 different types of fats. We've got monounsaturated fats, we've got polyunsaturated fats, we've got saturated fat, and then we have trans fats. So let's talk about the difference between those. So your unsaturated fats, those poly and monounsaturated fats, are actually really good for heart health. So when you think about those, I want you to think that they are liquid at room temperature. So think like an olive oil or a canola oil. They're liquid at room temperature. And think about your arteries and how that would go through so smoothly, right? Then think about saturated fat and trans fats, which are harmful for our heart health, as solid at room temperature. Think butter, think lard, those types of things are going to be higher in saturated and trans fats. Those are going to be the ones that we want to avoid because they're going to clog our arteries. So just to help keep things moving, even thinking about, if you make bacon, the grease that's in the pan and how after it sits there for a while, it solidifies because it gets to that room temperature, right? And it's not easy to clean. After it's already solid, it's not easy to get out of the pan. That's what you're doing to your heart by consuming those types of foods. So what I brought today for that is both of these cracker options here. So one's a cheese cracker that's pretty popular with the keto diet that's big right now, and then one is a bonito chip. So first let's start with the bonito chip. So this product has 7 grams of total fat in here, okay? So a lot of times people might get concerned about that, right? But we're gonna look a little deeper. We're gonna go into the saturated and trans fats first. So for saturated fats, there's only 0.5 grams of saturated fat in this product. And for trans fat, there's 0. So that means 6.5 grams of the fat in this product is coming from those heart-healthy fats that we were talking about, those poly and monounsaturated fats. It is a sunflower oil, I think, that is causing that to come up in this product and when they're making that. But this would be a healthier option in terms of a chip option. Next, we'll look a little deeper into the cheese crackers. So with this one, pull this apart here. This has got 12 grams of total fat in this product, and 8 of those grams are coming from saturated fat. No healthy fats are found in this, so there's no poly or monounsaturated fats. So those are things to think about when you're looking at a product. I know the keto diet is very popular, but maybe not in this way when we're falling into more of those saturated fat products. So the next thing I think of when I think of heart health is going to be the sodium. So the sodium intake is going to be important as well. So we really want to reduce our sodium intake to 2,300 milligrams at the top amount. And really, if we're trying to be more active about reducing that, especially if you have high blood pressure, we really want to look at more of like a 1,500 milligram amount. That is only 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So when you think about that, that's not that much. And more on top of that, 70% of the sodium that Americans take in is actually not found from the salt shaker. It's found from our processed foods, and it's found from eating out at restaurants. So we have to be so careful if high blood pressure is a problem for you, especially in that sodium intake. I think I read a statistic that they estimate that Americans take in 3,400 milligrams on average of sodium a day. And again, we're trying to hit 2,300 at the most, really closer to that 1,500 number. So I did bring some products today to show you to kind of go over sodium just a little bit more. As you can see on the presentation, there is the actual specific guidelines that they have to follow if they say the word low sodium or no salt added and things like that. So you can review those as I'm going through the products here today. So of course we have our regular sodium here, which is going to be 590 milligrams of sodium for just 1/4 of a teaspoon. So not very much there, right? So a suggestion that I use for a lot of my patients is going to be this light salt. So this light salt is half sodium and half potassium. So it's not a complete salt substitute. It's somewhere in the middle. It's going to taste more like your salt, but not have all that sodium taken out. It's also a really good option if you are on a hypertensive medication, because a lot of those you cannot have a salt substitute with because that potassium level gets too high. We don't want to have an out of balance there. So this is a really good option, something that I have at my home. I grew up in a family that my dad salts his pizza, so we use a lot of salt in our house. It's a hard one for me. New salt is going to be a complete salt substitute. So this would be completely all potassium and not that sodium aspect. And then I brought some different seasoning mixtures that we use at home. So the Mrs. Dash product line, I feel like these table blends are pretty well known. They have lots of different flavors. They also have marinades. They have mixes for like meatloaf or sloppy joes or tacos or fajitas and things like that. Lots of different options here. I brought just the original table blend here, but I use this a lot of times on my frozen vegetables, and I will tell you, because I like bold flavor, I usually use quite a bit of it, but it really is like person to person and how much you use, but a really great option for a salt-free seasoning mix, because a lot of times you will get in trouble with those seasoning mixtures and being really high in sodium and you're not even realizing. This Cavender's salt-free seasoning, this is a Greek seasoning. So they actually have the original and they have the salt-free. But this Greek seasoning is really good on like a white fish, a white chicken, also good on vegetables. Notice I keep on using vegetables. They're so good for you. But this is a really good one to kind of add a different flavor to your mixture that you've got going on there. I've actually thought about too, haven't tried this, but I was thinking about this as I was building this presentation, using it for like a Greek like turkey burger or something like that. It would probably be pretty good in there as well. So you also have to watch your salt when it comes to chips. So I brought here, this is a version of a salt-free chip. There's no salt added to it. So really there is lots of options for you if you have to watch your sodium intake. Another thing that we think of when we think of sodium is going to be the soup section, right? Usually in that soup section, it's going to be pretty high in sodium. So I brought these 3 options today so we could really talk about how much am I actually saving when I'm using this product. So the actual original serving here is going to be 860 milligrams of sodium in just the normal version of this chicken broth. When you go down to the 33% less option, that one's going to be 570 milligrams of sodium. And then my favorite and what I use at home is going to be this no salt added. So you can find this on several products. Just look for that no salt added. And this one's going to be only 45 milligrams in sodium. And that's just coming naturally from that meat. So nothing added to it, just natural sodium that occurs in our meat. So very easy sub. And sometimes I even use this no salt added broth in place of like an olive oil. So maybe I used olive oil to start sauteing my vegetables and I realized they're getting a little dry. Sometimes I'll add this to save a little bit on the calorie allotment there to give some more moisture to the product. And then last, I brought these cans here. I think I got diced tomatoes. So you can find this at Hy-Vee. It is always in a green can if it's a no salt added product. And then, of course, the original. So you can find that in tomatoes. You can find that in beans. You can find it in all the vegetables, tomato sauce. So lots of different options to really be watching that sodium content. It's just knowing where to look, right? So next, we're going to dive into diabetes. So, unfortunately, diabetes is a very I see a lot of people that have diabetes. So it's definitely a struggle for several consumers and several shoppers for Hy-Vee. And so what I look for when I'm looking at diabetes is I look at that total carbohydrate amount. I'm looking at the fiber. I'm looking at the sugar. More importantly, that added sugar that we talked about. And then I'm also looking at the protein because all of those are going to affect diabetes, right? So first and foremost, a lot of times people don't even know where to start with the amount of carbohydrates that they consume. So carbohydrates are key. A lot of times people think I just have to watch my sugars, but you really need to look at that total carbohydrate number. So for meals, you're usually going to be between 45 to 60 grams of carbs. For snacks, you're usually going to be between 15 to 30. But this is something that you would work out with a dietitian or a physician, personalize that to your plan and what you're looking for with your goals. One of the things that I think is key with this too is watching your portion. A lot of times people will look at the actual label, but then they don't portion the same amount and they don't realize how much more they're actually intaking. So for an example, a sweet potato, the portion for a sweet potato is only about the size of a computer, like a computer mouse. So not very much. If you're looking at like the little red potatoes, it's about like 2.5 of those. So a lot more smaller than what we're used to. I mean, I grew up on the farm in Chillicothe, Missouri, small town, meat and potatoes. I get it. It's a very small portion, but we do have to watch that and we do have to count those carbohydrates if we are diabetic. But what you can do to help that is have carbohydrates that have a good source of fiber. So for diabetics, I like them to look for carbohydrates that have at least 5 grams in the portion. That's going to really aid in slowing down the breakdown of that product, so that carbohydrate, right? So a lot of times I will explain it like a 15 or 16-year-old driving a car, right? When they're driving the car, it's fast go, like they speed up really quick and then they slam on their brakes. They don't really have good control. That is a carbohydrate in our system without that fiber or even protein with it. It spikes up really quick and then it drops really low. If you were a more advanced driver and had more experience, we hope that we would have more of an ease of a slowdown and an ease of an incline in terms of that speed, right? So that's what we're hoping for our blood sugar, the rise and then the falls. We don't want that sudden, that's not good for us, right? So 5 grams per serving for your total daily intake. We're really looking for a female to be somewhere around 25 grams, males looking closer to that 38 grams of fiber per day. So it's quite a bit. Fruits and vegetables are going to be very important when we're looking at this, but then also some of our prepackaged goods as well. The next thing would be that sugar. So playing back into that sugar again. The American Heart Association actually estimates, I think, that we are consuming somewhere around 80 grams of added sugar a day, which is staggering if you really think about that. And they go a step further than the dietary guidelines did, and they actually suggest that we are in that range again of that 25 to 38. You're going to see that number repeat. Again, 25 grams of added sugar or less for females, 38 grams or less for males. So fiber more, sugar less, right? So watching that added sugar because it does make a difference. And then last but not least is that protein. So pairing your carbohydrate with a protein option is again going to aid in slowing down that process of that digestion. So if someone was hypoglycemic, for example, that's a really good way for them to keep their blood sugars at a good steady pace because they're helping aid that slowdown of the digestion process. So for this, I brought some bar options. I feel like that is kind of something that people will go to as an easy breakfast option or snack. And I brought two different options here, one that I would suggest and one that I would not. So for this particular scenario, so most times someone's gonna look at this and they're gonna see total carbohydrates, 21 grams, fiber's got 1, total total sugar is 9, but all of that sugar is added sugar. So, but then they would probably look at this product. This one's got more carbohydrates because it's at 24. It's got more fiber because it's at 4 grams. It's got 15 grams of sugar. Remember, this one had 9, but none of this is coming from added sugar, okay? So that's the important thing that I wanted to show here. Same thing too with this one. This one only has 2 grams of protein, where this one is going to have 12 grams of protein. So this would be my choice for a diabetic because it's got better balance. It's got more fiber, it's got more protein, and it's got 0 added sugar, where the other product had a lot of added sugar. We're going to be talking about ingredients later and more in depth, but that's also something to point out. When I look at this ingredient list here, we're looking at somewhere probably around 20, 25-ish ingredients. I'm totally guessing here, but a lot of ingredients, where if we look at this one, I think it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ingredients on that one. So again, it's less ingredients, more whole, and that's what we're really ultimately trying to go towards, is more whole. So no on the Sun Belt, unfortunately, but this would be a better option for you. Another really good option would be when you're looking at a tortilla. Now, this is one of those marketing ploys, but it is a good option. But it says carb balance right across the front. And how would you know if that is actually a better option for you or not, right? Sometimes they're going to trick you a little bit. But this product in this case is a really good option. So this one is going to have 12 grams of carbohydrates for this one tortilla, but 10 of those grams are coming from fiber. Again, that fiber is going to slow down that digestion, and that is our ultimate goal for that, so your blood sugars don't rise too quickly or fall too quickly. This is also going to have 4 grams of protein. So you got both that fiber and that protein in this. I feel like I'm a broken record. I talk about fiber and protein a lot. But both are really good options and just an easy way for you to know that you're sticking to your goal when you're diabetic. Next, we're going to talk about what I would look at for a label for someone that is trying to lose weight. So, up here I have, what lower calories look like, moderate and high. You're usually not really going to use that in terms of a tool. But calories isn't everything, but it is something we have to watch, right? So several things go into figuring out how many calories you should be consuming a day. The fact if you're a male or a female, your height, your weight, your age, how much you're exercising. Are you a super active person? You're exercising all the time? What's your job like? Is your job a sedentary job, or is it on the move more? So those are a lot of the things that we look at when we're trying to figure out how many calories you should be consuming. At the end of the day, we really want your foods to be whole. right? We really don't want to be doing packaged products, but we also know that we're human and that that's going to happen. But when you sit down to make your plate, what I suggest is having a protein and 2 colors from the fruit and vegetable category. That is maybe 2 fruits. You could have 2 vegetables. You could have a fruit and a vegetable. You can do it however you would like. I actually stole this from the O'Keefe family and their book, but I love it, and I feel like it's very helpful in making sure that you're making a really well-balanced plate. Now, you might say, I'm missing the whole grains on this, right? That's not to say that you can't have that, but that needs to be the basis of your plate of when you sit down to eat each time. Other things that I look at when you're trying to lose weight goes back to that fiber again. That fiber is going to help keep you full for a longer period of time. So when you think about your digestion slowing down, that means it's in your body for a longer period of time, which in turn would make you full for a longer period of time. I think about smoothies when I think about this too, because a lot of times people will want to throw all these fruits and vegetables into a smoothie, and they want that to be the breakfast, but how long is that actually going to stay with you? I usually tell my patients that blender is doing the action that I want your body to have to work for. I want your body to have to break that down, because that process is not only going to stay with you longer, it's also going to help and aid in making you burn more calories because your body's having to work for it versus it just going right through, right? The next thing is going to be, again, limiting that added sugar. We've got to watch that sugar. I've got to watch that sugar. And I feel like, again, a broken record with that sugar. But we do have to watch that. And there's a reason why they put it on the label, because they know that that is a problem that Americans have. And then lastly is going to be that protein, but lean protein, right? That lean protein is going to help actually increase our metabolism and help it work at a faster pace, which of course will help you lose weight by that. But it's important that we're getting those lean proteins. So make sure you're watching your saturated and your trans fats when you're choosing your protein option, because that's going to be something that would be more difficult to watch. So for this, I brought a couple different options. So first option I have here is going to be these fava beans. So these are a really good snack option, especially if you're trying to get a crunchy snack in, trying to kind of stay away from some of the chip options or cracker options that you may have done before. This product for a serving is going to have 5 grams of fiber, only 1 gram of sugar. You can tell this is a smaller business because they haven't changed their label yet. And then 7 grams of protein. So at the end of the day, even if they had that 1 gram coming from added sugar, which honestly I assume that that's where it's coming from, not that much, and we've got a good amount of fiber, we've got a good amount of protein. This would be a great snack option for you to have. The sodium's not too bad on it either. Then for another chip option, I brought these Quest protein chips. And when you look at these have only 5 grams of carbohydrates. So it's a really good low carb option if that's what you're looking for. So it only has 1 gram of fiber because of that aspect, but it also has 19 grams of protein. So that's a lot of protein in that. So another really good option. Again, you'll see I keep coming back to that protein and fiber. They're both very, very good for your diet. Next, we are going to dive into the ingredient list. So first and foremost, when it comes to your ingredient list, you have to understand how those are put on the label, right? So the very first item that you're gonna see on your ingredient list is gonna be the item that it is majorly made from. So if I pick up this bar and I turn it around, soy protein nuggets is the majority of what this bar is made from. While I have it turned around, I also want to look at how many ingredients is on this. Closer to 30, I don't know, maybe 40. There's quite a bit on this one. Then I want to look at the first 3 ingredients, with the second and the third on this one actually is sugar of some sort. So there's that chocolate coating that sugar is the first ingredient for. Oh, and the next one is corn syrup. So both sugar, and we're really trying to avoid those first 3 ingredients being from a fat, being from a sugar, or being from a refined grain, right? So probably not the best option. The next option that I did bring is this Lara bar. So this Lara bar is made up of majority of dates. When you look at this label, it only has dates, almonds, unsweetened apples, walnuts, and raisins and cinnamon. So not much. So those first three ingredients are clean and whole products to make this bar. We don't have any fat. We don't have the dates or our sugar, which is a whole food, right? And we don't have any of those refined grains. So this would be a good option for us to look at when we're looking at an ingredient list. So try to think whole when we can. Doesn't always happen again, but try to think whole when we can. So when we dive into those specific things that consumers were worried about it, the first one that came to that list is MSG. So MSG is used to enhance the flavors of food. That MSG could cause things like headaches, nausea, numbness or tingling. There's a few other ones as well. Typically it's found in like Chinese food, canned like soups and things like that. But the research isn't really there to say that MSG is what is causing those symptoms. Not to say that it's not, but we just can't differentiate to make it that MSG is what's causing that. So my suggestion when it comes to this is if you're feeling those symptoms, there's no reason not to avoid it. It's not going to hurt you to avoid it. So try avoiding it. See if you see a difference in your feeling, and hopefully that'll make you feel better, and that would be the answer. If you don't feel like you have any of these symptoms, then I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. It's not something, honestly, that I turn around and look at my cans to look at, but I also don't consume a lot of prepackaged foods. So again, going back to that whole product option. So I did bring a few options to kind of show you that and what that would look like. So on this label, you'll see that it says no MSG, or at least I hope you can see that it says no MSG in it. So you'll see several like soups and like foods like that that would normally have MSG in it actually speak it out, because there is so much consumers worrying about that in their foods. When you would look at this label, it would actually spell out monosodium glutamate in that ingredient list. So you would just have to turn around those labels and actually look for that monosodium glutamate, and that's what you're looking for that MSG. But again, it's not one that is at the top of my list that I'm looking at personally. Next, we're going to be looking at high fructose corn syrup. So high fructose corn syrup is used to make things sweeter. So we know that our obesity rates have increased, and some of those health conditions like diabetes have increased as we have started to use high fructose corn syrup. You're usually going to find this in condiments, bread, you can find it in sodas, so several different items. I feel like this is one that is kind of hidden a little bit more. People don't realize that those foods would have it, but the research, there's not enough to say that high fructose corn syrup is worse than any other sweetener, but we know at the end of the day that sugar is not necessarily a good thing for us, and that sweeteners aren't necessarily a good thing for us. So this is one that I'm going to say avoid. We know that sugar is bad, and we're going to try to not have that, right? It's not to say that you can't have sugar, but try to avoid it when you can. But you have to have that healthy balance. You have to know what balance is for you. So that's something that you kind of learn through the process. But ketchup is one that you're going to find high fructose corn syrup in. It's going to be really easy to read that right on the label. But they also have products out there that will say real big on the front that there is no high fructose corn syrup added. So there are both varieties, and specifically for like this Heinz ketchup that I grabbed today, you can find both of those in the store. The next one I brought is breadcrumbs, because I feel like that's one that people don't think about. But it says clear as day on the back of the label that it has high fructose corn syrup in it. At my home, we don't even buy breadcrumbs. Instead, we just use our bread, which typically we're gonna buy like a 45 calorie Sara Lee bread. We'll do the Dave's Killer bread or Ezekiel bread, all free of high fructose corn syrup. We'll toast it and then we'll throw it in the blender to make it breadcrumbs. And the kids love it. It's a lot of fun. It's a good time to, get the blender out. The kids love it. Makes it really loud in the house, and that's just normal when you have kids, so they really enjoy it. So that's what we do for breadcrumbs. Next is going to be the fully and partially hydrogenated oils. So in other words, this is trans fat, which we've already talked about. American Heart Association says that we should limit all trans fat and avoid it altogether. This is going to be found in things like peanut butter. I found it in coffee creamers, margarines, any kind of store-bought sweets. So we really want to try to avoid this one. So actually, as of January 1, 2021, the FDA is supposed to be regulating that's no longer found in our products. But with everything that we have going on, my guess is this is probably going to get pushed back. So definitely we want to avoid this. We know that we can help our hearts by not having trans fats. So when you can, try to avoid that. I feel like peanut butter is the one that people are most shocked about when we look at that. So when I'm in the store with a consumer, I'll usually have them pick up whatever peanut butter they normally purchase, and then we turn it around together and we read the ingredient list on that peanut butter. So I grabbed Jif today. This is just the regular one, and it says made with roasted peanuts and sugar, our friend, right? Contains 2% or less of molasses, which is another sweetener, fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, and mono and diglycerides, and salt. So for what peanut butter is, this is way too many ingredients, right? Peanut butter should not be more than 1, maybe 2 ingredients at the most. So this would not be a good option in my eyes for you to choose. Whereas this Smucker's option that I brought here is just gonna have peanuts and contains 1% or less of salt. That's it. A lot of people are scared of the peanut butters that have the oil on top. So what we do at our house is we just turn it upside down. We store it like this in our pantry. It will start to mix on its own. Then you'll just take your knife or your spoon. You'll stir that up the first time you open it, and then again store it like this. Typically, I'll just fold up a paper towel underneath it just in case whoever was in the peanut butter last didn't get it screwed on real well, not to make a mess. But a really easy option to not have to worry about the oil. You might have to stir it after that, but really usually not that much. And then also, several of our Hy-Vees actually have fresh peanut grinders in the store. So that's another option that you could do for that, or that is literally just peanuts. That is all that is in that product. So another really good option. And last but not least, we're just going to tackle artificial sweeteners all together. Because when I saw aspartame, I was going to stick to just that. But then I was like, this is too hard. I feel like we just have to tackle the whole topic of artificial sweeteners, right? So obviously, these are going to sweeten our products. They're going to be used in a lot of the diet tea type foods that you see out there. They're used for diet foods, but they're also used for diabetics. So you think about, I think of Russell Stovers, I think of Atkins bars and things like that. Very high and using artificial sweeteners or sugar alcohols, which we'll talk about too, to make that product sweetened without having the sugar. So the research that is out there is conflicting. They've ruled out most of the cancer risk, but not all of it. And there is research that says that you're tricking your brain to think that you're consuming sugar, right? And that in turn makes you crave more sugar. So, dietitian says, let's just avoid this if we can, right? Again, we have to have a healthy balance in life. It's not to say that you won't see me eat ice cream or sweet or something like that, but I just don't have those things in my home, and I know that that's my healthy balance. If I don't bring it in, I'm likely not to consume it. If it's there, you bet your money I'm going to be in the pantry eating that. But if I just go and stop and get ice cream with my kids, that's a one serving time, and then we move on. It's not to say that I can't have that. But let's talk about the sugar options that are out there. So Splenda is probably one of our more popular options that are out there that was really big for a while. I feel like it's probably decreasing a little bit if I had to guess, but that's going to be sucralose. So really not the option that I would suggest. So that is the one that you have seen some research that is related to both of those things that I was talking about before. So probably not the best option. The next option that we're going to have here is going to be Truvia. Truvia is actually a majority of a sugar alcohol and then stevia leaf. So they kind of promote themselves. This is good marketing. They promote themselves as being a stevia, but it's actually majority of a sugar alcohol with a stevia leaf. So sugar alcohols are not considered artificial sweeteners. But they can have laxative effects for some people. So it's very like person to person on if you can consume these and if they're going to bother you. If they don't bother you, there's no reason to not consume these that I've seen in research. So an okay option, especially I feel like with stevia in the powdered form, a lot of times it has a bad aftertaste if it doesn't have that mixture with the sugar alcohol, which is also what Swerve does here at the bottom or at the end there too. It is a sugar alcohol option. I like that one personally for things like if I need a brown sugar substitute or a powdered sugar substitute. They have both of those options. And then if I was just doing something to like sweeten maybe my coffee or my iced tea or something like that, I would usually use this stevia leaf drop because in the liquid form, it actually doesn't have that aftertaste and it's a really good option. And that lasts us somewhere between, I think, 6 months to a year. So it's a one-time purchase for the year usually, and that's it. So I did bring a few products just to show you what it looks like on a label if there is sugar alcohols in it. So this is the Hershey's sugar-free option, but when you look at this label, it actually has sugar alcohols on the label. So if you were to have 4 pieces, which is 14 grams of sugar alcohols, okay? But then if you were to have this whole package, it's 37 grams of sugar alcohols. So if you were one that sugar alcohols bothered you, this probably wouldn't be a great option. Remember when I said I just don't bring these things into my home? Like this would be a package for me. This would be something I would consume the whole thing. I wouldn't be able to portion control as well as I would like to. So depending on if you have sugar alcohols that bother you, this may be not an option, but if they don't bother you, it would be a good sweet option for you. And then also something like a Quest bar, which is really a pretty healthy option. It's got a really good amount of protein, really good amount of fiber. Let's look here. We got 14 grams of fiber, 21 grams of protein. When you look at the label there of the ingredient list, it does have quite a few ingredients. Not as bad as our other bar that we looked at earlier. But if someone didn't like, say, the RX bar, this may be another option that I would give them as a quick bar option for breakfast or a snack or whatever it may be. But it does have the sugar alcohols in it. And some of them actually have sucralose. But as you can see here, that what I'm pointing to is the very last ingredient, basically, on that label. So if you remember right, that means that is the least amount in this product, right? So really not a ton. So in my eyes, the benefits would outweigh the negative in this if there wasn't another option that the consumer really liked. So again, it's not black and white as much as we'd like it to be in terms of what I would suggest for consumers. But that's our day-to-day. That's every day for everything that we do, right? We can't have it black or white. There is some gray. And again, it's finding what's your balance because that's different for every single person. So at the end of the day, we would like you to choose whole foods first, right? When you're looking at a section, I'd like you to think of things like that. I'd like you to think, I'm looking at the cereal section. I'm looking at the bar section and trying to find the healthiest option in that category. And not so much across the board throughout the store, because I think that's when it becomes overwhelming. And it goes right into it. Don't overwhelm yourself. When we overwhelm ourselves, we get in that all or nothing personality trait. And at the end of the day, that's why diets don't last, because you get in that all or nothing mentality. You go grab all this produce and then you're throwing it out a week and a half later and you're mad that you wasted all this money. Start small. Start with, maybe it's your coffee creamer. You need to find a healthier option for your coffee creamer, or start drinking coffee black. Start small like that. Do that for a week and then build on that. That's the ultimate goal for us. So like I said, I'm one of your Hy-Vee corporate dietitians. We have 3 other here in the KC Metro, all spread out throughout the Metro. We also have in-store dietitians to help you with any of your health needs. I'm so happy that you stuck with me through this breakout session. I can't wait to see you in Hy-Vee soon.